All right, buckle up, because today we're taking a deep dive into a topic one of you specifically requested, and it's a doozy. Chris Butler and the Science of Identity Foundation.
Oh yeah, this one's gonna be interesting.
You sent over a ton of articles, forum posts, social media comments, and wow. I mean, we're dealing with some serious accusations here.
Yeah.
Talk about cult-like behavior,
Yeah.
financial irregularities, even a connection to a former U.S. congresswoman.
It's crazy, right? Like, how does all this stuff even get tangled up together? Spirituality and power and influence. It's really something. And it's not just like a small group tucked away somewhere. The Science of Identity Foundation, SEF, they're global.
Okay, so let's break this down. First, who is this Chris Butler guy, and what is SIF all about?
So Chris Butler, he goes by Jagadguru Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa now,
Catchy.
right? Well, he's got a history. Started teaching back in the 70s, mix of yoga and Hindu philosophy. But then there's the LSD thing, from back in the day.
Yeah, saw that.
And then he kind of morphs into this guru figure. That's where things start getting a little murky.
Murky is a good word for it, because from what I've seen, SIF is like this super structured organization. Businesses, boarding schools, the whole 9 yards. Some people straight up call it a cult.
Yeah, I mean, that word gets thrown around a lot.
Sure.
And there's no official cult checklist.
Right.
But when you read what former SIF members say, their experiences.
It's pretty alarming.
Yeah, there are definitely some parallels to classic cult behavior. But gotta say, there are also people who say they had positive experiences with SIF, so it's complicated.
Always is, isn't it? All right, so let's get to those accusations. What are former members actually saying?
The big one that keeps coming up is financial exploitation. People talk about being pressured to donate tons of money, like their life savings kind of money, and working in SIF businesses, but for next to nothing. Then there's the whole you can't question anything thing.
Don't criticize Butler. Don't question the teachings.
Total loyalty.
Classic power dynamic. What happens to people who try to leave or speak out against SIF?
That's when it gets really interesting. Lots of sources talk about how SIF basically demonizes ex-members, calls them fallen, says they're dangerous, that kind of thing.
Wow.
It's a way to control people, keeps them from leaving because they're afraid. And the ones who do leave, well, they're totally isolated.
It's so messed up. It's like a constant cycle of control and fear. But there's another name that pops up a lot in all of this. Alan Tibby, a.k.a. Akuria Das. Who is this guy, and what's his deal?
Okay, so Alan Tibby, he's like Chris Butler's right-hand man, super involved in SIF,
Yeah.
led curtain sessions, stuff like that. But some sources say he also ran a SIF boarding school in the Philippines.
And there's a whole QNet thing too, right?
Oh, yeah. Can't forget about that.
This multi-level marketing company that supposedly got financial ties to SIF.
Yeah, and that gets into some seriously murky territory.
Hold up, multi-level marketing.
Yeah.
So we're talking about a potential pyramid scheme on top of everything else.
Potentially, yeah. And remember all those accusations about SIF pushing members to work for low wages, donate a ton of money. Well, maybe QNet is part of that whole picture. It's not a good look, that's for sure.
Definitely not. And that's where we start seeing the Gabbard family come in, right?
Yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard, former congresswoman, long history with SIF.
Oh, yeah, big time. Her parents, Mike and Carol, they were followers of Butler way back when. And Tulsi, she grew up in that whole SIF community. Some people even say she went to that boarding school in the Philippines, the one Tibby was supposedly running.
Okay, so we've got Chris Butler, this whole SIF organization with its questionable practices, Alan Tibby, the Gabbard family connection. What I'm still trying to figure out is, what's the goal here? What is Chris Butler ultimately playing at?
The million-dollar question, right? And there's no easy answer. Is it power? Money? Does he actually believe all this stuff? Or is it some crazy mix of everything?
I mean, the sources paint a pretty wild picture. Contradictory statements, demanding absolute loyalty, erratic behavior. Hard to tell what's real and what's manipulation.
It's possible he's a really complex figure, even to himself.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
Totally.
Okay, I think we've laid out the basics here. Chris Butler, SIF, Alan Tibby, the Gabbard family, the accusations.
Yeah.
But why should our listener care? What's the takeaway?
Well, it's not just about this one group, right? This whole thing with Chris Butler and SIF, it raises questions about how we protect ourselves from potentially harmful groups. They're everywhere.
That's a good point. And not just groups, but ideologies, trends, all sorts of things. How do we learn to spot the warning signs?
We need to be critical thinkers. Be skeptical, especially when someone is demanding total obedience, and be aware of the potential for manipulation, especially in a spiritual setting, because it happens a lot.
And this whole thing with Butler and SIF, they managed to stay under the radar for years. Even with those political connections, makes you think about the role of the media.
For sure. The media has a responsibility to hold powerful people and organizations accountable, but we have a responsibility too. We need to be critical consumers of information. Be aware of biases. Don't just believe everything you read or hear.
That's more important now than ever. It's like information overload.
Exactly.
Okay, there's one more thing from the sources that really stuck with me. There are these allegations that SIF members were discouraged from getting outside help, even for serious stuff, like medical or psychological issues.
Yeah, that's classic controlling behavior. Isolate people, make them dependent on the group. It can be incredibly dangerous.
So if someone you know is in a group like that, discouraging them from getting help, that's a huge red flag.
Definitely. It's a sign they might be caught in something really messed up.
Wow. This has been a heavy episode.
It is heavy.
But it's so important to talk about this stuff. So Chris Butler, SIF, the accusations, their tactics, the impact it all has on people.
And the bigger picture, too.
Right, the bigger picture. We need to be aware of these things. Be critical thinkers.
Absolutely.
You've given us a lot to think about. I know our listeners are going to be processing all this for a while. But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thought.
Yeah.
We've seen how, deep this whole SIF thing goes. But you've also mentioned stories about people getting out. What's that like? I mean, can you really recover from something like this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, leaving a group like SIF, it's not a light switch, you know? It's a journey. And it often starts with these little tiny doubts. It can be so hard, though, like you're questioning your whole world, everything you thought you knew.
And on top of that, you might be cut off from friends, family, who are still in the group.
Exactly. It's a massive emotional, psychological, and it takes a lot out of you.
You talked about resources for ex-members. What kind of support is out there? Where can people go? Are there organizations that specifically help people who've left groups like this?
Definitely. There are some great organizations like the Cult Education Institute, the International Cultic Studies Association.
Right.
They've got info, support groups, even counseling. And it's specifically for people who've been through this.
That's good to know.
And then there are online forums, communities, places where people can connect, share their stories, because it's important to remember you're not alone. Not at all.
This whole deep dive has been, I don't know, it's really opened my eyes. It's like anyone could get sucked into something like this.
Yeah.
Especially if you're looking for meaning, or a sense of belonging.
It's true.
So what advice would you give to someone who's questioning their own involvement in a group? Or maybe they're worried about someone they care about?
Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, off. If you're being pressured or you're seeing those red flags we talked about, it's okay to take a step back. Ask questions.
Yeah.
Encourage open communication, critical thinking for yourself, for anyone you're worried about. Remember, healthy communities, they want you to think for yourself, to grow, not just blindly obey.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here. Chris Butler, the Science of Identity Foundation, the accusations, the tactics, the impact this all has. I mean, it's a lot to process.
Yeah.
And this deep dive, it's definitely raised more questions than answers.
That's kind of the point, though, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's about getting people curious, encouraging them to think critically, not just giving them a neat little package with all the answers.
Exactly. It's about giving you the tools, the knowledge to keep exploring on your own.
So what's the big takeaway here? What do you want our listener to walk away with?
Think about this. What if the most important journey isn't about following a guru or some prescribed path? What if it's about learning to think for yourself, questioning everything, and then making your own path with awareness, intention?
That's a powerful thought.
It is.
So until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, keep diving deep. We talked about how harmful all this can be, but what about the people who do get out of SIF? Can they heal? Can they rebuild their lives after going through something like that?
Oh, absolutely. And it's important to remember leaving a group like this. It's not easy. It takes time. There can be emotional scars, maybe financial problems, relationships that are strained. But there is help out there, Support networks that can help former members heal and get their lives back.
This deep dive, it's really made me think about critical thinking. Especially now with the internet and everything. I mean, misinformation is everywhere.
It's true. It's so easy to get caught up in a story, whether it's some spiritual teaching, a political thing, even just like a viral trend.
Right, exactly.
And it's more important than ever to be able to step back and think, wait a minute, is this true? Question things, think for ourselves.
It's like we can't just passively accept everything we see. We got to be active. Look for the truth.
Absolutely.
Man, this whole case has been a wild ride.
It really has.
I bet our listeners can be thinking about all this for a while. We've gone deep into this world of manipulation, financial exploitation, and how it affects people.
And it's a reminder that, even when it comes to spirituality, there can be a dark side.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave everyone with this. Knowledge is power. The more you understand about how these groups work, the better you can protect yourself and the people you care about.
So stay curious.
Stay critical.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
And never forget empathy.
Yes.
Because behind every story, every headline, there are real people. And we need to try to understand what they've been through.
And support them as they try to heal.
That's a great point to end on. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep diving deep.